Yikes, I'm disagreeing with the armor skeptic. So this video is from actually a while back. I just found it. It was posted on June 4th. It's actually part of his Armor's Gregory series. So this channel that the Armor Skeptic created is for voicing his opinions. And it also features June a lot. And the ones that I've seen are basically he's playing video games, and then he either listens to a video or he comments on a article. This particular one's one of his first ones in this series, and he talks about just basically his own opinions about masculinity and chivalry. I don't disagree with his main thesis, but I just wanted to comment some things in return. So this will be kind of my personal opinion rant. So yeah, let's start it.
I never thought he would get popular or famous or anything. I kind of just used the character to help myself think through things. Like,
I feel you.
Even in everyday situations today, I think, what would Armored Skeptic think of this? Because I still find myself very easily swayed by things. I always have been. The reason I don't call myself an atheist, technically by definition I am an atheist. I don't believe in any actual gods. But I'm very open-minded to the idea of there being a god, or that the universe has some sort of consciousness.
You're
a lot
not
of things
smart
have happened
enough.
in my life where I can't help but feel that they were meant to happen. They had this bastardized version of what chivalry was. And it's not BuzzFeed's fault, and it's not the fault of the actors. That funny concept of what masculinity is, and that funny concept of what chivalry is, was actually a product of the Victorian age. And it was a device that was used to kind of portray knights as some sort of romantic hero. And it was never really a proper representation of what knights were. Certainly there were knights that were like that, but chivalry wasn't about how to treat women. It never was. Chivalry...
Okay, so this is, I would say, his first mistake. Let's just look it up, because he says that it's been popularized by the Victorian era. I guess you could say the Victorian era has the most influence of pretty much modern idea of chivalry, like the modern chick flick, you could say. But chivalry goes back to the Middle Ages, well, close to late Middle Ages, like 1100 to 1200.
Was more of a code of conduct. Chivalry was a different thing to every knight. It depended on who the knight's leader was, whether that leader was a king or a duke or just a really rich person, or it also depended on what their own particular group thought chivalry was.
So basically he's saying here that chivalry means different things to different knights. Well, yes and no. Obviously for every single idea, it means differently to every single individual. That's the same for any idealism. I mean, you could argue that what do you consider to be a Christian, or to be an atheist, or to be a whatever, even a feminist, it can mean different things to different individuals, right? It depends on where you're raised and what you're exposed to and things like that. But there are some fundamental doctrines that are similar. And when it comes to chivalry, if you're talking about going back to the Middle Ages, there is such thing called the Code of Chivalry, and it's kind of written down. Like, it's not something that's just passed through speech. It's something that pretty much every knight is expected to adhere to. And so let's just take a look at the Code of Chivalry. I can't spell. Okay. So as you can see here, it's a code of conduct, like I said. It's associated with the medieval institution of knighthood. and it's developed between 1170 and 1220. And this is kind of like something that's been popularized, that the knight is being armed by the lady. Now, he said that it never had anything to do with women or how you treat women. This is not technically true. In the beginning, if you look at this, like the Ten Commandments of chivalry, it's about fighting as a warrior and about being faithful to the church, right? I mean, well, this is kind of obvious because this is like very deep into when Europe was heavily Christian and the church had a lot of power. And all the kings and the feudal lords and even the emperors are kind of to a large extent controlled by the church. It's kind of like this really weird thing. I mean, as a Chinese, it's really weird for me because it's like in China, there are religious institutions, but the emperor pretty much had all the say. I mean, the emperor don't go beg like the leader of the religious institutions for something. But in Europe, this is the case. So this is kind of like a thing in Europe. The medieval literature, it started to become, you know, something involving service to women. So it's here, this is what you can see. So then you say, here it says that the chivalry can be classified into three basic things. And one is that the duty to God, and one is duty to your country or your countrymen. And then you have a specific thing called duty to women, which is something that got popularized. And throughout the literature, it's kind of like this idea where you can serve a noble lady. Generally, it's a noble lady, like not just like any woman, it's a noble lady. This noble lady can be your beloved, or it could be someone that you admire, maybe even love, but you could never actually marry her. So you have this idealism of putting yourself in her service, but it's not like it has to be a romantic relationship kind of a thing. If you read this Wikipedia article, it kind of tells you that the idea of being service to a lady kind of got developed from the idea of the worship of the Virgin Mary. Here we go. The medieval developed chivalry with the concept of the honor of a lady and the ensuing knight devotion to it, not only derived from the thinking about the Virgin Mary, but also contributing to it. I think that it's not just the Virgin Mary. I think Virgin Mary was kind of like, she was kind of like a replacement of feminine religion that was occurring before Christianity, like the Celtic religion worshipping Mother Nature, the Great Mother. So there was kind of a tradition of worshipping goddesses in Europe, in Northern Europe, before Christianity. So this tradition probably didn't start with just during the Middle Age. It probably went back to the tradition of Europe in general, the Europeans, with their monogamous society and all of that. So anyways, the point is, he's not entirely correct to say that chivalry is never about how to treat women, or that it's completely subjective, let's just say it like that.
One night, chivalry was never eating fine foods, never being with women, never doing anything that's even remotely luxurious, because a knight should be a hardened, gruff, scruff man who never allows himself to enjoy life and to only enjoy battle. That's your only purpose in life is to kill other men. But to some people, chivalry was you would spend time with the king and you'd hang out with princesses and princes and you'd be really nice to women and you'd go to these fine dinners and balls and stuff, and it was like a political position almost to be a knight. It was different for every man, but I can tell you
I forgot to mention here is that this kind of changed throughout the centuries, because yes, initially it was mostly about fighting. You have the knights to fight for either professional fighters, but then as the centuries went on, knighthood became kind of like, you know, like a nobility kind of a thing, And you can even go as very far to say, like, today we still have knighthood, right? But they're now about, like, almost like an award, like people get knighted for being an actor and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it changed, but again, it's not a completely subjective thing. For each person, obviously, it can mean something different, but it also changes with the society. So yeah.
I don't want to lie here. The kind of men that do that kind of thing, the kind of men that show a woman that they would do whatever it takes to get them, and then whatever it takes to keep them, is not the kind of man that ends up in a happy relationship in the end.
Okay, I just want to mention something, which is that he's right in especially popular media, like in chick flicks. This is what's expected of a man, but honestly, in real life, I've never met a man who will literally do everything for a woman. I mean, I know that they exist, but I've just never met them. It's I mean, he's gonna go on talking about this, but I just wanted to mention that it's complicated in that there's an overt thing, and then also what is underneath, what is really happening. So this idea that men should do everything for women is kind of like an idea, but in everyday life, it's not really what is happening. It's not really just men would just like do everything, he can for a woman. I mean, again, there are men who do that, but it's not like every man is just gonna be expected to do that, and he has absolutely no autonomy, because he can walk away. I mean, I've met many men who just like, very simple thing is a deal breaker, and he just breaks up with a woman. So yeah, it's not so clear cut as he says. Let's go on.
And it's kind of the same thing with a relationship. When a man goes into a relationship with a woman and he tells her, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to be there for you. I'll give you whatever you need, no matter what. The woman has that expectation out of the man. And
okay, here this is where I disagree. So again, this is what I talked about, like what is on the surface versus what is really underneath. So a man is expected to say these things. Let's just say, like, in a traditional society, a man is expected to give his vow first, right? So it's kind of like the man is expected to propose to the woman, not the other way around. So the man is expected to openly declare that, openly make the promise that he's going to do everything for the woman, and not the other way around. But really, society, I mean, I'm not talking about like this feminist situation right now in the modern society where you even have laws turning in the favor for women, right? Then everything becomes really fucked up. But if he's talking about just even more traditional society, like society 100 years ago, even in Europe, the woman is taught by her family that she needs to take care of the man too. It's not just, I mean, unless you're talking about like really freaking aristocratic, really rich families where, you have servants, and family would never worry about their money running out and things like that. But that's kind of an extreme case. I mean, those are the cases we see in Jane Austen movies. They always talk about the rich families, so you can have the fairy tale kind of feeling watching it. But for most people, although the man is supposed to propose, although the man is supposed to make promises, the woman is expected just as much to take care of the man, in her own way. She's expected to be the housewife. She's expected to take care of the children. She's expected to even sometimes manage some of the financial burdens, that the man carries. So it's kind of like a complicated interplay between what's written on paper almost and what is really happening underneath. So it's not so clear cut that the man swears everything to a woman and then the woman just expect that that's actually is going to be what's going on in her life. Again, some women may think that. I mean, I personally find them pretty dumb, but again, no woman that I've met just go into a relationship and just kind of go like, oh, well, he promised that he would do anything for me, and yeah, that's it. No, I mean, every single woman I've ever met understands that she has to do something back to you. This is what she's been taught.
And the man already told her he'll do whatever it takes for her, no matter what. But then one day, obviously, the man is going to want something back. Even like something as simple as just that she'll do something to make him feel like he's loved. And the relationship could be several months old at this point when he starts to realize that he's not getting anything out of the relationship, that it's all him. Like, that kind of relationship isn't...
I would really argue that if a man meets a woman who's really liked it, then she definitely does not love him. I mean, she definitely is in the relationship for her own benefits only. And even the most selfish, most lacking self-awareness woman I've ever met takes care of her man. I mean, not very well, but she does. I mean, she tries to. For example, get him to eat healthier. Let's say she tries to get him to stop drinking. She tries to, I don't know, like cook for him once in a while. And yeah, I mean, once again, I know that there are a lot of women who are really selfish, but when it comes to real feelings, no, generally, a woman would naturally do something back. Maybe that's not enough for the guy. Maybe there's an imbalance, and there are cases that the imbalance is towards the woman, some cases the imbalance is towards the man, but yeah, once again, it's not so simple as Armoured Skeptic is trying to convey here.
Bad, necessarily. I'm not saying, again, it's not the woman's fault. It's I don't even want to say it's society's fault, but for some reason, we have this idea now that the man is supposed to be chivalrous in the modern concept of chivalry. He's supposed to open all the doors and pay for all the dinners and take care of the woman's every need.
Yeah, I do have to say that this is pretty fucked up. Again, I was not aware of it. I was actually quite shocked. Should I be that shocked? But still, I guess shocked is not the word. It's more like weirded out. Yeah, I guess that's what you're supposed to do as a man if you formally go on dates with women. So yeah, I mean, I definitely don't agree with this.
I think I learned it from movies and television. And movies and television always have the guy that chases the girl down and she just keeps saying no, keeps turning him down no matter what. And then at the end of the movie, he runs to the airport and like pours his heart out to her and says, no matter what, I'll be there for you. You're the only thing in this world that I understand and I love, and please don't get on that plane. Please be with me. And then she does it and everyone claps and yay.
Well, this is the female fantasy. This is the chick flick movies that he's talking about. It's kind of similar to porn for men in a way. I mean, what I'm saying is this idea that he talks about, like the guy has to chase the woman no matter what, and the woman just keep turning him down until like at the very end her heart melted and yay, right? It's not the reality, and but it's a fantasy for women. It's kind of like the women's fantasy because in real life it's not like that. Real life, most women, I would argue, would not meet a guy who will love them that much, right? I mean, for most people, relationship kind of sucks, but you have to get real. The most likely, the person you find will probably be okay-ish attracted to you. I mean, not like falling his head over heel over you. And vice versa. I mean, with women it's the case, with men it's the case. And so this would be like a fantasy for women. Now, the counterpart would be kind of like porn for men, right? Like, in real life, men are never going to get sex as good as those being shown in porn. The only difference between the two is that chick flick is, can be shown pretty much in any theater, whereas porn is like they kind of have to keep it on the radar and watch it on the internet or by themselves. I mean, it's not really allowed actually in movie theaters. But the point is that, the transmission of this information came from kind of a fantasized version of reality. It's not reality, if that makes sense.
But then that relationship ends up like several months down the road. He's gonna be like, wait a second, she got off that plane to be with me, but she's not doing anything for me. She's not rubbing my back when my muscles are sore. She's not making me feel better when I'm sad. Her expectation is that I will always be there for her. And again, that's not her fault. That is the relationship that he sold to her. I'm not saying that it's a problem that these kinds of relationships exist. What I think is the problem is that...
I definitely think it's a problem. Just so you know, if there's such a relationship, whether it's a woman doing everything that she can to a man and she's not getting anything back or vice versa, it's an unhealthy relationship in general. So I definitely would say that that's a bad relationship.
This is the expectation now. A man has always been the protector of the family, the provider of the family, the emotional rock of the family. And
again, I've said this in my last video. I don't agree with this, really. I mean, not always. Again, now with the extreme feminist situation, it's kind of weird. But across history, this is the overt thing. But what is covert, what is really happening in the families, in even the level of like the ruling class, women probably did more than they're giving credit for. I mean, they're kind of doing it behind the throne, so to speak. And if you really read the history books really deeply, you'll see that, yeah, their roles are non-trivial when it comes to even protecting the country, when it comes to supporting the husband, when it comes to, running the country, being the emotional, whatever he called it, the emotional bridge. Women are just as much part of society, just as important to keep the society to function. So yeah, they're both just as important. It's not men doing more than women, historically speaking.
It's a very roundabout way to get at that the kind of man that I am, the kind of man that I want to be, the kind of man that my girlfriend wants me to be, is almost universally frowned upon now. Like there's something wrong with it. Masculinity in general in modern society doesn't mean what it used to mean, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. Like, we're a smart species. We evolve. We constantly change throughout time.
I don't know about this. To me, it's pretty similar. I mean, masculinity means, you're like a man who knows exactly what he wants, a man who's intelligent, a man who's confident, and striving to be the alpha, finds solution to problems, protects his family or his country or whatever, his tribe or whatever you want to call it, is really physically strong. I mean, I'm seeing this in pretty much every single action movie or every single movie in general about men, so I think it's pretty consistent, but whatever.
And in the modern society, we're going to have different kinds of relationships, different kinds of men, different kinds of concepts of masculinity, and that's cool. But that doesn't mean that the older forms of masculinity have anything wrong with them inherently. Now, let me give you an example. The kind of relationship that I have with my girlfriend is very old school. It's the kind of relationship that they used to promote in the 50s as the perfect relationship. I'm the man, I wear the pants, I have the majority of the control in the relationship, however you want to put it. She makes me sandwiches, lights my cigars, brings me my scotch. I put my feet up, she cooks dinner, but then on the other hand, I'm also the protector. I allow my protective instincts to flow. I've heard people go as far as to say that this type of masculinity is toxic.
Okay, so this is where something that I really want to rant about. So he's talking about all this kind kind of in a male perspective. So I would like to give him some female perspective on this. So when I listen to this relationship that he has with June, I cringe a little bit. And it's not what you think. It's not because I think this relationship is bad or this relationship is toxic or his masculinity is toxic or whatever. It's really coming from kind of a emotional place. And that is, I really truly think that at this point in our society, women needs to step up. And I don't mean in a feminist way and just go out in public and whine about shit. I really mean that they really should involve themselves into more activities that are commonly more attributed to men. You know, they should involve themselves into STEM fields. They should think about becoming the head of the household more. They should think about becoming the financial provider. They should collaborate with men to solve the world's problems. And all of that. So again, I'm not talking about skeptic and Shuan head per se, but really just the image that this is giving me, which is kind of going to my emotional place, is really a woman who feels that she needs to be protected, which is like in a Western society now, pretty much every single law is in the favor of women. She can freaking protect herself. If she feels the need to be protected, it's just something that I feel that she's not stepping up, so to speak. And he's gonna say this later on, which is that he says that he met like a father who had a shirt who said that if you want to date my daughter, you basically have to respect her body and things like that. And I understand from the father's perspective, and he's a father, right? I mean, he worries about his children. But really, if I were his daughter, I would have said, Daddy, what makes you think I cannot protect myself? What makes you think that in the modern society where pretty much the law protects me? I mean, in some states, they're giving laws where if I just accuse a guy of rape, the guy could get in serious trouble. What makes you think that in such a society with such laws, I cannot protect myself? So really, when skeptic is saying, well, like if I do all the chivalry things such as open doors and pay dinner and all that stuff, and it's seen as coming from toxic masculinity, I don't like guys opening the door for me, and I certainly don't like guys paying dinner for me. And when they do that, I don't think in my head, you're just acting out of your toxic masculinity and wanting to oppress me as a woman. No, I don't think that. It's more of it reflects poorly on me, because I'm being treated like children, and which kind of means that as if I cannot open doors for myself, as if I cannot pay for my own dinner. So it's kind of like, imagine if your passion is to run, and you go onto the tracks, and you happen to have very scrawny limbs, and you also have very short legs, and then you're with these people who have very strong looking long legs. I'm just giving you kind of a stereotype here. So you go into the track, and these people looked at you, and they say with sincerity, you can see it in their eyes, like they're not saying this with a smirk on their face. They just said that, it's your first day, why don't we slow down for you, see how you do, and then we'll do it for real when you look stronger. Now, you as a person, if you are decent, well, that's a nice thing, but you might love the sport so much that you feel offended, right? You feel like, what makes you think that I cannot, just do this without you guys pampering me, right? So you might be thinking, okay, maybe I am going to be the slowest runner on the track, but I'd rather it be like that. I'd rather it to be a fair competition rather than you guys slowing down for me, even if you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. So this is kind of like what and I know many women feel about men doing chivalrous things. It's not that we think men are doing this out of like wanting to be dominant or whatever, or trying to involve themselves in oppressing women, or they like submissive women or some shit. No, it's just because it's kind of like, you know, reflecting that we're always going to be the weaker sex. We always have to be the ones who are provided for. And that's something that I personally have a distaste for.
There are toxic relationships that are very toxic because the man has the control. But just because some men take that control the wrong way doesn't mean that every man that has control in the relationship, every man that is the man of the relationship, is toxic. And it doesn't mean his masculinity is toxic. It doesn't mean the relationship is toxic.
No, I mean, I would agree with this. I mean, it doesn't anywhere near mean that the relationship is toxic. But on the other hand, I would like to say that despite feminist efforts, despite all this like wacky weirdness with the extreme left-wing people, this relationship that he talks about with June, it's still the norm. I mean, it's still the very common, probably the most common case. You know, you have like a air quote masculine man with a woman who's more of like the caregiver rather than a caretaker. So if we lived in a society where you have all different kind of relationships and they're all almost on equal proportions, let's just having this thought exercise right now. And he's saying that, well, it doesn't mean this, it doesn't mean that it's toxic or whatever. I'll be like, yeah, I mean, I would really feel it's really unfair for this particular type of relationship to be labeled as toxic compared to other kind of relationships. But this kind of relationship is the norm, and I think what it creates is more pampering women and more just society not moving forward, so to speak. So this kind of a more traditional conservative kind of relationship, it's for the longest time, for vast majority of the people, it's for starting a family, right? It's helping to raise children, and for most people, I mean, they can afford to be selfish during those times, because you're talking about societies in which most likely man is going to die, your man's going to die somewhere. If it's not by war, if it's by hard labor, the woman may die from childbirth, that kind of stuff. So you cannot really afford to think about other people. So you have to think about, I have to have as many children as possible. I have to make sure I raise my children properly, so that my gene is, passed down. But now we're heading into a society where people are getting more and more overpopulated because, men are not massively going to war as before. The world becomes more and more populated as a result because people are not dying off as much as before. And then you have, the world getting smaller from, all these immigration and all this stuff. So people really need to start thinking about, caring about other people rather than themselves. So I guess I'm also saying this coming from the fact that, I'm not a fan of children. And it's not because I think like they shouldn't be loved or things like that. It's actually coming from the fact that every single time I see somebody having children, I think of two things. One is that the person's kind of contributing to the overpopulation issue, and the society has to take care of, the children. And the second thing is, well, I'm not seeing kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. I think in the next 20 to 30 years, I'm kind of a pessimist. I don't think the world's gonna become better. I think it's gonna go on to a more worse place where you're gonna have fewer and fewer jobs. And so, what are these children going to do when they grow up? But really, the real emotional thing is that I tend to believe that we should no longer have this mentality that the children needs to come first, like women and children, we already have women coming first. No, I personally don't think that a child's life is more precious than an adult's life. I tend to have like a bias for adults, just because the kind of suffering that adults go through on a daily basis. A child cannot compare on the average. I mean, of course, there are different situations. Some people suffer more as a child than as an adult, but generally speaking, you suffer more as an adult than as a child. So I think that we need to first and foremost take care of the adults before we, just go and procreate and keep talking about taking care of children. This is just, anyways, my personal opinion. And this is also something that I feel when I see, like happy children on the playground playing, and this is very subjective and it cannot be rational in any shape or form. But I really have this feeling that those children should not exist until we really take care of our adults. So yeah, I mean, again, it's not rational, but it's just how I feel when I see those children playing. I think they're just in such a niche. They're in such a kind of a bubble, not knowing, being unaware of how much suffering there is in the world, and those suffering tend to be adults. With all of that said, that's why relationship structure that was the function of having children is just not something that appeals to me, and it's something that I think society has to move past in terms of becoming better, and also in terms of the dynamic between men and women. There also needs to be kind of a certain sexual selection involved, so that both men and women just become better.
Today's alpha male is a male that, like me, is the man of the relationship, the one who protects, the one who takes care of the family, the one who is the emotional rock of the family, the one who takes charge, takes control, and is very, very protective, especially of the women in his family and in
Once again, this is the norm. I'm just saying.
his relationship. We're being treated today as if that is inherently a bad thing because there are men who have those roles and do bad things with them.
Again, he's kind of thinking this too much from a male perspective. A lot of time it's not that. I know the feminists like to perpetuate is that, but I'm just saying that there's another side to it. So both men and women, this is what I talk about, sexual selection. They kind of sexually select each other. And there's another side to it, which is that for a man, if he were to, I'm just talking about generally speaking, this is from what I observed. Feel free to disagree with me. But for a man, if he goes and he look for a partner, like a female partner in a heterosexual relationships, keeping it constant that the physical attraction is, let's say, the same for man and woman, right? Because physical attraction is just something you're attracted to without even having to know the person. You look at a person and say, oh, this guy's attractive or this woman's attractive. So let's take that out of the equation. If you take that out of the equation, for a guy, generally speaking, the thing that attracts him about a woman is, I would rank it like this. Number one is like pretty much how well she, the physical contact, basically, like even how well she gives him the sex, basically. So for a lot of men, especially young men, how well the sex is, how good the sex is. It can be a make or break it kind of a situation. So if she just does fantastic job with that, with the physical aspect, then he can stick with her for a very long time. If not, he can break up with her. And then the second would be her personality, whether or not she's over the threshold of being kind of a nice person, she's nice enough. And then I would say, whether or not she's smart enough, like her smartness. And I kind of separate this from wisdom. So wisdom is kind of like something else, but just smart as in like the practically smart, as in she's very efficient at solving problems, like daily problems. And then is her career. And then is wisdom, how idealistic she is, how philosophical she is about the world and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of like, generally speaking, how men views women. And for women, viewing men is like almost the opposite. I mean, a really wise man, a woman really likes that. A really wise and smart man, and if he also is very good in his career, those are kind of like the top things for a woman, generally speaking. And then it's kind of like personality, and then it's kind of like sex is pretty low. The physical stuff is pretty low. Of course, there's some people might debate with me saying that, well, if a woman's experienced, then she'll have to have that. But still, I mean, if you're talking about like make it or break it deal for young men and young women, the women definitely don't like make it or break it having this kind of thing with sexual stuff as much as men. That's just my observation, anyways. So what this means is that there's a kind of a sexual selection going on. So for a man, a woman can be pretty dumb, but if has a relatively good personality and the physical stuff is just the chemistry they call it is just great, then the man will stick with her, right? So then this means that being an intelligent woman, it's just kind of an icing on the cake almost. It's not like an important attribute for women, for men. So if she's somebody who's really truly independent thinker, if she's somebody who's really focused on her career, I mean, men like to say that, feminists say that the men don't support their career, and that's bullshit. Well, yeah, I mean, that's exaggerated, but those things are more like icing on the cake, like I said. So if she does these things and let's say they trade other aspect. So basically this woman is like a workaholic. She's very, competitive, but she's kind of workaholic, and she doesn't do the other stuff, more feminine activities, then it's kind of a turn off for men. So from this perspective, from what I see, is that this is not really good, because like I said, I think women needs to step up. I think women needs to become masculine, more masculine in a good sense. So they need to learn some masculine stuff from men, because they need to participate in making the society become better. And this sexual selection that goes on between men and women from this norm is just holding, it's holding society back. It's holding women back, really. Not in the sense of like affirmative action and things like that, but just holding them back from wanting to, to become accomplished, wanting to step up. I mean, part of it is also their nature, obviously, but I think this society is not really helping any. So yeah. So what I'm saying is that women who are too accomplished, who are too intelligent, they're not seen as very attractive. Not because men think those attributes are not attractive. It's just that they tend to come with certain baggages that they tend to trade off other aspects, other more feminine aspects that men are attracted to. So then, yeah, they become unattractive as a result. So again, it's not toxic masculinity, you know. It's more complicated than that. There's both sides to the story. That's what I'm trying to get at.
There's lots of different types of women out there too. But if a man like me wants to be the man of the relationship and he finds a woman who wants me to be the man of the relationship, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with her. It doesn't mean there's
Obviously
something wrong
not.
with the relationship. This current idea of chivalry, this current idea of the man gives up all the control of the woman, and then the woman has all the control, and then that's like a normal relationship. That is the only type of relationship that's not toxic. Bullshit. Every relationship has to go on a case-by-case basis. Just because people like roles, just because I like a gender role, my girlfriend likes her gender role, and that's the kind of relationship we have, doesn't mean that we're a fucked up couple. It means that we have a different kind of relationship than you, and there's nothing wrong with that. This was a bit of a ramble. I didn't have like a solid point, a solid theme.
So again, just reiterate what I said. No, this kind of relationship is not toxic. Not anywhere near toxic. What I'm perceiving is just that it's too much of a norm that's holding women back from becoming better. And the feminists are definitely not helping. And feminists are actually perpetuating this kind of thing. I mean, again, it's like on the surface they say this is toxic and blah blah blah, but you know, like you have Emma Watson doing the he for she. I mean, it's like Dr. Rand said, it's basically marriage in a nutshell, right? I mean, they're really perpetuating this idea. They're really holding women back on this kind of extreme thing, but just using kind of a different reverse psychology kind of thing to get themselves going. So again, on an individual to individual base, no, absolutely nothing wrong with this relationship, and I wouldn't want to police anybody who want this kind of relationship. It's just that, like I said, I think society needs to move past it in order to make, especially women, become better, become more responsible, and become like mature adults.